Emotional development. So emotional development is about, part of it is emotional literacy, being able to read and recognize other people's emotions and also being able to express emotion. Now, we can develop this quite early on in our life. We can start to recognize other people's emotions, but empathy is something we don't really develop until we've gone through the egotistic stage. So empathy is being able to understand or recognize or experience what someone else is feeling. Attachment is a key element here. So again, our connection between children and caregivers. So attachment is a really strong concept that will run throughout this topic. Self-image is also a key concept here. So again, it's about how we see ourselves, and this is connected to self-esteem, so how we feel about ourselves. So these are the key concepts that run throughout the entire life cycle when it comes to emotional development. Now, in infancy, the first thing, as I mentioned before, is attachment. Bowlby is a really key figure in infancy and emotional development. So really, he's talking about attachment. So secure attachments, issues like separation anxiety, how this links to us building resilience, the impact it has on our future relationships. These are the key things that Bowlby is talking about, and that's really a massive topic that would need its own summary, but essentially Bowlby is key when it comes to emotional development. Now, we also have theories like Answorth, or thinkers like Answorth, who talk about how the quality of our attachment helps shape our self-image. And you've got Schaefer and Emerson, who also appear, and again, talking about the types of attachment that children form. So early on, sort of in the 0 to 7 month bracket, children will have indiscriminate attachment. They will bond with anyone. As they get older, they start to identify primary carers. Then we get separation anxiety, and then multiple attachments with other family members. So these are the kind of stages that children go through. When it comes to childhood, understanding themselves and others is the key here. So children start to use their imagination, they start to develop social roles, and they start to understand how other people work, and they start to work through play. Children begin to imagine the me, and their sense of self develop. So their self and self-concept develop here. Relationships with other people and other family members may influence whether a child feels valued or has a sense of self-worth, and obviously has an impact with their relationships with teachers and friends. In adolescence, identity is the key. So again, it's like with childhood, it's the sense of self continues to develop, but again, it's more of a unique identity and more personality traits, character traits develop. Within this, we see self-concept being really, really substantial as well. Now, a person needs to have a clear understanding of their identity in order to feel secure when working with other people, and this is also part of obviously forming loving and sexual attachments. And there's also this idea about self-esteem. Now, this can be a stressful time, particularly with self-esteem, and obviously relationships, so in terms of social development with peers, are quite significant in affecting self-image, self-esteem. Physical development like puberty also has an impact on self-image and self-esteem. So these are kind of interrelated impacts, but ultimately identity itself is the key emotional elements. In early and middle adulthood, intimacy starts to become more of a prominent feature. So again, it's not about having sexual relationships is in adolescence, but it's more about intimate relationships, and not just having sex, but having a sort of deep relationship and a sort of emotional connection. So in adulthood, obviously self-esteem is influenced by your job status, marital status. This impacts on your self-image and how you see yourself. And obviously building these attachments is really key. One of the other things, obviously, you learn to cope with stress. So the emotional attachments you build with a partner help you cope with emotional stress. It helps with resilience. So it's almost coming back to Bowlby and these attachments. And obviously this would also extend with then early middle adulthood, having children and then forming attachments with children and sort of repeating the Bowlby cycle. But the more attachments you have, the more resilience you have, the more likely you are to be able to cope with stress. And then last but not least, we have later adulthood. So again, in terms of emotional development, around this time you start to make sense of your life. So you need a secure sense of self to enable to cope with physical changes. So this is where your sense of self, your self-image, your self-concept is a bit shaken, because you're retiring from work, your role's changing, your role in the family is changing, your physical body is changing. So again, these are all changed and shaken by these changes. So self-concept, sense of self having a knock. I would also say, obviously, emotional despair, so obviously bereavements and deaths, and these have an impact here. But also I think losing attachments has a key factor, because in other stages of life you've got attachments and you've got bonds and connections to help you cope with stress and anxiety. In later adulthood you start to lose these connections, and that can have an impact on your ability to cope with these changes. Okay, and there we have it.